Yes, okay, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
If
All right.
so you're good to go.
Awesome. So everyone, just to formally introduce myself as well as everyone here on the panel, I'm Jose Cruz. I'm the founder of Integrated Projects. Started as an architect, found myself on the other side of the table as a construction manager. Shared with you guys a little bit earlier today, but what's kept me up at night is that it's really difficult to get an accurate set of drawings. And so today we have the technology to make that process just less crappy. For folks to really take 3D scans, convert them to 3D models. And that thesis is kind of snowballed into what is Integrated Projects today. We're serving some really cool companies, from multi-location owner-operators like Tesla to really big architectural firms, construction firms, et cetera. And so turns out that to get accurate information, no one can easily tell you what's inside their building. And so that by making scan to BIM as a process simpler to just order, easier to understand, and more standardized, we're actually now digitizing hundreds of buildings per month, from homes to hospitals, data centers to schools, skyscrapers, and everything in between. That's what's keeping us up at night. So I'm going to pass the mic to Sabrina, let her introduce herself, what's keeping her up, what she's excited about. We'll go from there.
Hi, thank you so much. So my name is Sabrina Kleman. I am currently the lead UI UX designer at a company called Wincast, which is a company that is essentially trying to gamify and amplify your sports viewing experience. I won't go too far into it, but what keeps me up at night is probably I'll start by saying I came from a software development background, and I worked primarily on front-end web and app design, and obviously development. And I worked for NBC for about 4 years, and worked on emerging technology projects, including augmented reality, apps for Universal Studios, and in the emerging tech space like Magic Leap and machine learning projects as well. I moved into the UI UX space because what keeps me up at night is how to thoughtfully design in a way that doesn't get too... There's an overwhelming amount of stuff in the tech space, and I guess I'm focused on how do we bring the most compelling, usable tech to people without trying to use too many bells and whistles to get their attention, because it's a really cluttered space out there, and now it almost seems like the most user-friendly interfaces are almost overlooked because someone else is doing it in a flashier way. So how can we think about thoughtful design, cool design, but think about it in a way that is functional, usable, and compelling? And I am really excited to be speaking here with you guys today. I came from, before the company that I'm previously at, I was a senior UX designer at a company called Kanoa with Preston. And that was a company that originally was focused on interior design and furnishing large-scale office spaces with a focus on sustainability. So through that journey, I had a decent amount of opportunity to learn about the architectural and engineering space of large-scale office buildings and their sustainability issues, and just in general, just get really freaked out by the where our world is heading. So with that, I'll pass it off. Yeah.
That's a great pass. Hey, everybody. We spoke earlier. I'm Preston Smith. I work with Jose at Integrated Projects as the head of BIM operations. My job there is really to manage the machine, the entire production process. So we do scan to BIM made simple. We scan a space, 3D model it, and then deliver it to a customer. And so there's a whole lot of things that happen in there to make that sentence possible, and I help to manage that process. My background is, like a lot of folks in this room, architecture. And then I was a BIM manager. I loved architecture, I loved design, but I found that I was actually a lot better at the tech side of things. So maybe is kind of interesting for you guys as well. And as a BIM manager, I found that the BIM managers were only focused on like kind of smaller things, and I want to be even more interested in tech. So I became a software developer, which is where I met Sabrina at Kanoa. And yeah, and now I'm working at Integrated Projects. It's a pretty exciting space. Super excited to work with you guys too, to kind of like hear your experiences and hopefully give some advice on how to move forward.
What's keeping you up at night?
What is keeping me up at night? Yeah. Oh man, so many things. So many things. Yeah, no, a little bit of work. I mean, so the interesting, and I'll give you the long story short version, which is our team is global. So some of my closest colleagues are in Kosovo or in South Africa or in Vietnam. So what's keeping me up at night is because I have to talk to my colleagues in Vietnam. That's
Literally.
yeah, literally have to talk to. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. Everybody has a different take on it. It's like that fable about the elephant kind of thing. But you're trying to all solve this one problem together. So working as a team is the other thing keeping me up at night. But a lot more fun than I've had in years, I'll say. So kudos to Integrated Projects. Pass to Jeffrey.
Hi again, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Liu. I am a recovering architect. Currently, I'm a senior web developer at a company called Mural, which is a digital whiteboard and collaboration platform. What's keeping me up at night these days is not if I'm going to be replaced by AI. It's not even when. It's more realistically how much of me is going to be replaced by AI, because it's happening. You know, you guys are doing it. I saw in your projects you're using GPT to generate code snippets. And as it gets more and more intelligent, more and more of my work will be automated. So that is definitely a real thing that's keeping me up at night. But for the moment, AI is a very powerful tool that I leverage a lot in my day-to-day. My background's also in architecture. Jose and I worked a long time ago together at a firm here in New York City called Robert Stern Architects. And I realized very quickly that the design process wasn't for me. I won't go into all the reasons, but I just,
Scare 'em.
Much like Preston, I realized I was more interested in the tech side, and so I did some time as a BIM manager, as a BIM consultant. I even worked at a VR startup for almost a year, and it was all fun. And then I realized I sort of wanted to have a bigger impact on the world, and I felt that web development in particular could help me reach that. Millions of people use Mural every day, and so it's pretty impactful. Like just if I change the text on one button, for example, millions of people are going to see that and be impacted by that. So that was always the draw for me, why I moved into web development and technology in particular. I think that's it.
So I want to maybe start with AI. I know this is a hot topic, but where and how you guys are using it within your workflow might vary. But I'm curious, today, this was actually the first time that I saw a group of students proactively use it in such a way where it's actually now kind of augmenting. I can't believe I'm saying this, but back in my day, I guess we just didn't have that kind of thing, which isn't, but I'm actually really, really excited to see you guys not just using it, but like using it in like really exciting ways in your work. So I just maybe want to start with saying like how individually you guys are using it, what's appropriate. Jeff maybe has accepted the fate that it's not a matter of if, but like how much. And so I'm curious to hear like kind of the ratio as to, just what's appropriate today.
Want me to start? Okay. Well, I use ChatGPT all the time, but I have to say I use it a lot for UX research, and also I've used it for like code snippets and stuff before because I also do help. I'm kind of a hybrid. I sometimes do help out on the front end side. I will just plug and say that if you're ever thinking about like any sort of I think similar to like architecture and engineering, maybe a little bit different. I think that it always like having some experience in the other is always going to strengthen whatever you're doing. So if you're an architect and you have a little bit of background in engineering, I think that helps strengthen it, vice versa. Similar for me, coming from a software development background, I think that it helps with thoughtful design. Now onto the actual question. I use it for research in the sense that, like, if I'm trying to figure out how to solve a UX problem, or like I'm trying to think of a workflow, I can search. Essentially, it just filters your search. So I'll search like, give me a list of apps that do X, Y, and Z. And it actually just does the searching through the web for you and just gives you those examples, and then you can individually search them after that. And it's like, it's not replacing anything. It's just like, instead of me trying to, because I've tried going to be like, you know, like sports app game UI, and it's like, not good try. And so, but then when you, yeah, exactly, it's just really, it sends me down the dumb internet if anybody watches Nate Bargatze. But yeah, once you use ChatGPT, and it can really be a powerful tool just to get you to where you need to go research-wise, and then you can take it from there.
I don't actually use it as often as I should, and I say that mostly because a lot of my job ends up having to do with talking to people. So ChatGPT kind of can talk to people, but like, you can't ask the question of like, well, how do I manage this and resolve this conflict? I mean, maybe you could actually. I haven't tried that. It'd be an interesting thing. What I do think it is useful for, and I've spoken to you guys about this earlier, is synthesizing information. Like, humans are really, really good at listening to things, but they're not always great at articulating the things that they understood from what they just heard. ChatGPT is incredible at that. AI in general is really great at like consuming and ingesting large amounts of data and then just spitting it out. So when I need to understand a really difficult concept, that's usually when I need to do it. Like, what is physics? Like that's a weird question to ask. Like, that's how I would maybe use it. Outside of that, I did have a use case the other day. So we have a lot of data, and a lot of our data is stored in Airtable. It's like rows and rows and columns of data. And sometimes you need to write formulas to like do a bunch of stuff. That's something that it's really great for. The same way that you guys are using it for Grasshopper. But what I think AI is really great at, like I said before, is like consuming and synthesizing information. If you want to understand something really, really fast, but at a very surface level, I would use AI over almost anything. And then I would check the hell out of it, because it gets so many things wrong. So yeah, something to keep in mind. But, yeah.
Well, I use AI to generate dank memes.
Oh, nice.
In all seriousness, I actually use, what's interesting is when ChatGPT first came out, I used it a lot more in my personal life than I did my professional life. Like, I used it to summarize emails or change the tone of my emails. I even used it to rewrite my resume a few times.
Did it work?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I couldn't just use the output as is, but I tweaked it a little bit. It gave me the general gist of like, I gave it some bullet points and said, rewrite this so that I'd be an amazing, front-end engineer, and it was helpful. But then all of a sudden, last year, my company enabled AI for all of us and said, use it, like, we're paying for it, use it. And so I was like, okay, let's jump on the bandwagon. And at first I was using it mostly to generate code. And then I realized it was a terrible idea, because it is actually really bad at generating good code. It's like a very overconfident intern who's extremely confident that he has the right answer, but is almost certainly full of holes. So what I use it for these days in terms of coding is either if I look at a really long convoluted piece of code and I don't understand it, I say, tell me what this does. And it's usually pretty good at that. Yeah. Or if I know I want to do something, but I don't know like the exact syntax, I'll be like, how do I use the fetch API? And then it will tell me step by step how to do it. Or even better, actually, what it's really good at is writing tests. So that's a thing you guys might not be familiar with. When we write code and we ship code, one of the things we have to do is test it, right? Because we want to make sure that all the edge cases are covered. Not just like the thing that it should do, but all the things that a user could potentially break it in ways that you don't expect. So you write tests for it. And it turns out ChatGPT is very good at looking at a piece of code and saying, okay, this is all the things that we should test for. So now I use it all the time at work, and I don't really use it that much in my personal life anymore. Yeah.
Not using it to write birthday cards or anything.
Not anymore. It's weird. It's like the more I get exposed to GPT generated stuff, the more I can spot it. Yeah. And then I get self-conscious. I'm like, I feel like other people can as well.
So I had that incident a couple of times. We work with a lot of modeling teams, and this was actually a pretty interesting use case. So English may not be everyone's first language, right? And so what I think they were doing, or at least in this person's case, was he was writing a message very long in his language, and then he put it into ChatGPT or something, and then spit it back out. Or the point was it was way too formal. It was like the most formal message you've ever seen of anybody ever, and I was like, this is very strange and weird. And it made the interaction like that much more strange, because I was like, I don't even know how to talk to you now, because we're not even, beyond not speaking the same language, we're not even speaking in the same way, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think people use it for interesting reasons, and I'd be curious to kind of run that test for myself, like in another language, like how formal can ChatGPT make my, I just wanted to know where my project was message, like, so.
Really
yeah.
dips into that uncanny valley.
Exactly.
It's just, yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, so I wanted to ask you guys, my hunch is that in like 5 or 10 years, we're probably going to listen back to a lot of these conversations about AI. We'll probably be laughing at ourselves, right? Like, I guess, maybe the same conversations companies were having in like 1990 about, the World Wide Web, right? Which obviously sounds silly now as we've kind of all grown up with access to the internet. My hunch is that with AI, it's just going to be kind of like par for the course. Like, of course, we're using these in different ways. How, maybe to shift towards like the product development cycle, there's things that are going to be augmented, like in your kind of day-to-day and your challenges. But I'm curious, like, how you guys take some of the basics, things that will probably not change about building incredible products, and maybe how you guys think about taking a problem, and then ultimately there's some product at the end of it, and how you guys think about it uniquely, starting with the basics that probably won't change. There's a problem, there's a solution, we got to build a product. I'm just curious, AI aside, just what's probably not going to change about the product development cycle?
Yeah, just because it's top of mind for me, I'm actually, I'm moving a team from a team that was very established to a brand new team that's solving a brand new problem. And how it came to be, and this is, probably going to resonate with all of you, is we hit a point in our sort of growth, right, where we rang as much as we could from our existing product. And we might, be looking for new revenue streams or new ways of expanding our platform, right? So, it's definitely financially motivated, right? There's some financial motivation there of like, how do we add value to our product? And so that was a business decision that was driven, and some team prototyped like very quickly a working prototype and sent it to our customers and said, hey, do you guys think this would be a product that you would use, that you would pay for at the end of the day? Because we're not just building software for fun, we're not building products for fun necessarily. It should have a customer or a problem that it's trying to solve. And they very quickly got feedback on the fact that yes, this new feature was incredibly powerful, but not in the way that we were imagining it. And so then we went back to the drawing board and did a second iteration of it, showed it again, and got more feedback. And now we finally have a direction of like, okay, let's build this out for real. Like, let's move out of prototype land and do it for real. And I didn't even know if that answered your question, but I think having a sort of customer focused, or just like think about what do our users actually want, is pretty key in building a good product.
I'll jump off of that one and say, I mean, like pretty much what I was thinking about from that question was exactly the same thing of, you know, you're not selling this to bots, you're selling it to users. So ultimately, you know, you can do as much usability testing as you want. You can do as much automated, like actual accessibility testing or et cetera that can be automated. But in terms of the actual, you know, user research, which I vacillate on how much I feel like, you know, primitive or primary user research is necessary. But in terms of like creating an app for a specific user, you need that feedback, and you need that human feedback in order to keep it, because just like the way that our tech is constantly changing, people are changing, and so what they personally need, you know, tech is never gonna 100% keep, it takes in data, so it's not gonna be able to keep up with or like predict trends of what users are gonna want. So 100%, yeah, in terms of the you know, user testing side or user research side, I don't think that'll ever change.
Or even
you
just
want to do it fast, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't want to invest hundreds of millions into building a thing that you don't even know if anyone's going to pay for it. And that's why we did it in a very scrappy way. You know, just like have three people very quickly prototype something, a very inexpensive way, and get it into the hands of customers before we like invest in full infrastructure. So, fail fast.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that sums up to like product management, basically.
Yeah.
Like product management stays un-AIable. But yeah, no, there's always humans on the other ends of these things. Like I think everybody's had that experience where you're on the phone with customer service, or we actually have this conversation about customer service, and literally nobody wants to talk to the bot. Everybody's like agent, because like it's actually a bit more satisfying to just say the thing that you wanted to say, which you maybe could have said to a bot, and have it solved. But like absorbing that data from the human about what the problem is. I mean, we spent the entire day today talking to you guys about what your actual problem is. If like you can sum up your problem, then the solution becomes that much more clear. And so it's figuring out what a problem is actually is something that AI probably isn't great enough at. Maybe because of the same problem that we're trying to solve, which is there's not enough good data sources. But I wonder, I mean, I wonder if you have enough good data sources, can you actually solve for all the problems you really think you can? So, yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question actually, but I think that's like a thing, philosophical pondering. It's just some, exactly, it's just some question.
Oh, I think the common thread is that like the importance of getting feedback on your product is something that's extremely key. Maybe to shift over, Sabrina said something that I resonate well with, which is a lot of the screens and interfaces that we interact with on a day-to-day are pretty awful. Like, so define, what does this mean? Like, what is great interfaces? How do we get better?
Thanks. Well, the crux of my job. So I think there's a lot of things that different people in my field will have their own opinions, but I think across the board, usability is a big one. I think that that people, again, focusing on the function, or like it's a lot of like form over function a lot of the time, where people are just trying to make an appealing app that doesn't actually fix your problem. But I also think that, for example, I guess I'll give you a couple examples and I'll tell you what I think they do well, and then the one that comes to mind that I think is really started on the high and is now the worst is Facebook. Facebook is just so incredibly cluttered, and also on that note, too busy, horrible. It's also consistently, completely reworking its UI. So, in terms of what you were talking about with automation, like I also think that for designers specifically, actual human and or product team thinking about how that app is going to scale or where the app is headed is extremely important, because I think that you can if you're only focusing on the now, for example, like Facebook has reworked its entire platform multiple times, and suddenly buttons where you thought they were are no longer there, and it's extremely confusing. Apps that I think do well with that specifically is like Spotify. I think that it can be a really, if you disagree with me, you can tell me why. But I will say is that I think Spotify borders being really cluttered, but I think that it has the same feel throughout all of its iterations, and I also think it adds a layer of personalization that really all it's trying to do with its updates is trying to give you more and more personalization, which I think is also a really compelling feature of a lot of apps where you feel like the app is tailored to you. I think Airbnb does a pretty good job of being just a very functional app that has a lot of features but keeps it very clutter-free. And I think that the features are easy to spot. So I think in general, just a tool set that isn't too cluttered and consistency and, some element of delight. You don't want it to be like, I'm trying to think of like a really old school app that looks really, really bad, but
like corporate looking.
Yeah, corporate. I mean, like Microsoft Office, like Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft. No offense, but like also Microsoft Outlook is the worst. The search engine is so bad. It's like, hey, did you want to find this email from literally 2 days ago? Good luck. But yeah, I guess I'll jump off there. Please.
I actually agree with you with Spotify. I love Spotify.
Yeah.
My one quip with it is that I forgot how long ago it was. It was like recently. They used to have a heart button when you liked a song, and then all of a sudden one day I was driving along, right? I had it in my car like phone mount, and it changed. I was like, wait, where's the heart button?
Yeah.
And I fumbled around for a couple seconds when I was driving trying to find the darn thing. It was dangerous. Yeah, it was like like a button moving.
Yeah.
Probably almost killed me. How crazy is that? You don't even. I'm sure the PM or the UX designer didn't think about that.
Yeah.
When
what
they
a
were.
What a great fear-based.
Like fear unlocked.
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna use that for why I should justify my job. And it's like, hey man, this guy almost died from bad UX, so let's be real. You need me. And to jump off of that, another thing is actually what I was going back to before is accessibility testing and usability testing. A lot of times things will break, and you don't know that they're going to break until you ship them. So do that. I
totally agree with that. And the do you guys hate it when you go to a website and then the first thing that comes up is like, if you sign up for our email, you get 10% off.
Yeah.
Or and then they make the X, like that's really good. Like look how visible that is. But sometimes if you visit like, okay, I'll just name one out there because I saw this recently. Banana Republic. If you go on their website, they give you a big modal that has an image on it. You can't even see the X. You can't even see it.
Yeah.
Like it's in black or some color that you can't see, and that's very. Besides bad UX, it's not accessible. And I didn't learn this till I became a web developer. Accessible design is good design, but a lot of people think of it as an afterthought. And what I sort of mean by that is one of those is visual accessibility. So you want to ensure high contrast. So for example, like that is the X is very visible. You don't want to put the X as like a light blue or something because you won't be able to see it well. Yeah. Or making sure your text is easily readable. You don't want to be wearing reading glasses. Yeah. Stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Just as you would focus on responsive design, that should all be in keeping. Like when you're thinking about, like when this web page shrinks, don't worry about doing it. But when it shrinks, it's like you think about, similar to like the way that design and development meld. It's like, I've been to, and I'm sure that you have too. If you like slightly shrink a window, or if you go to the mobile version of some site or something like that, all of a sudden like you get the heading, and then it's like 5 million bars of white space, and then you finally get to like the products or something like that. It's like just in terms of accessibility, responsive design, yeah, just thinking about as many use cases as possible, but 100%, like, again, form over function, it's like a lot of people think like, oh, well, this like light blue might look cute, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, no one can read it, so yeah.
There's also like one other aspect we didn't talk about, which is like screen readers. Like there's
Yeah.
like designing for people that don't see the same way that the average public does, or think the same way the average public does. You can still actually get something done. And oftentimes you end up, like you said, accessible design is good design because it ends up being better design for everybody, right? So like high contrast becomes a better thing for everybody because if I'm not hard of seeing, if I can't see as well, I can still see your X button and close it out. Joking about Spotify trying to kill you, like that literally can be the difference between how somebody can navigate a space. Like I need to call 911 and I can't figure out where the call button is because you designed this app completely weirdly.
The last thing I'll say on it is like,
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody in this room uses Instagram, and if you don't, that's totally cool. You're probably cooler than me. But the transition from like if anybody remembers, like when your icon suddenly became like stories, was like a real big shift, because I was just trying to click on my like icon to go to my page, and all of a sudden it was like just bringing me directly to the front camera. Very disorienting. So yeah, definitely and also they added a shop and they added all these kinds of things. I feel like it used to be, again, it used to be one of my favorite apps actually. When I would talk to people about good and bad, I would be like, Instagram does this well, Facebook does not. I think Instagram is trying to come back around, but for a little while there, it was just so simple, and it was just so perfect in what it did. And then it just tried to incorporate all of these different things. And I don't like when with the search bar with the meta AI thing. I'm like, why? So, I think that there's a limit. I think that people get really feature happy and they like start just thinking that they need to add more and more and more. And sometimes you just need to perfect what you do.
Does any particular app or like recent experience from the students here resonate? Like, is there an app that's really stood out as like a delightful experience? I'm curious. I can share mine, but I'm just curious if anything stands out. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like a lot of like products in general go through the like phase where it's like they think that more is better, but really less is like more. Like before you would have a car and it has like a telephone and like 10 cup holders and like all of these unnecessary things, and now you look at it and you're like, oh shit, that must be like from the future, like has so many buttons and like you don't even know what to do. You think you're in like the cockpit of an airplane, but you're just in like some like 1970s, 60s car that thinks like if we have all of this, like you're set to go for like the rest of your life. And now you go on like a Tesla or something, it's just like an iPad, and like you don't even see the vents of like the AC or anything. And I guess that's just like what I was thinking of when you were saying that.
Wait, do you have a favorite app?
I wanted to, there's a few universal truths that I think I at least I hold on to. There's this saying that like if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. But by that it suggests that like actually editing or summarizing is actually a service to others, right? It's actually easy for us to be long-winded, and like I wish I had it up here, but I could show you presentations of like how I presented the company before versus like today, and the common thread is like I'm actively trying to say less with like a lot more, typically with like animations and visuals to tell a story. And so I actually resonated, like, for example, one that stands out for me is I think Airbnb does a great job of like designing in such a way where like they say like one thing at a time, and like the cognitive load that like they take off my brain is like fantastic. With all of that, there's always like a counterpoint. I don't know if anyone's seen like the Amazon product page recently, but it is like the complete counterpoint to this. It's almost like some Frankenstein over time. How do you explain this? Like, what? I don't know if you guys have any particular thoughts on this one.
I'll say one thing, which is as much as I love Amazon, I hate Amazon. So I hate Amazon for a lot of reasons, but like from a design perspective, I really, really dislike Amazon. The great thing about Amazon actually is its product management. The fact that you go on and you say, I want, I don't know, 64 count paper towels. Like, I don't know, like whatever it is you were going over there to find, strangely enough, you'll be able to find it on Amazon, that should be the way that they sell themselves. Instead, they're like, we have everything. And so we'll show you everything. And I don't know if people do click on all of the everythings that they have, but like, I certainly don't want to. I'm like, I need to get out of here and just go find the one thing I wanted to find. And so I don't know why they did that. I don't know what would make them want to do that. That seems like the worst possible way to design something. But I mean, shit, I'm not a billion-dollar company, so I probably shouldn't say that.
I have this actually reminds me of something. So, not specifically Amazon, but I agree with what you guys are saying about like just all the clutter. I think with any feature-rich application, you have this challenge. And even Mural, if you haven't seen Mural, go to mural.co. But even the Mural app, we realized that new users, by which I mean users that are completely unfamiliar with the virtual whiteboard, they struggle to use it. And for me, it's so easy because I've used it 100 times or a million times probably at this point. But for a brand new user, they get overwhelmed with all the things you can do. And so we recently did an experiment called UI simplification. Literally, that was the experiment, where we tested 5 or 6 different ways of reducing the clutter on the homepage, with the hypothesis that new users would be able to use it better, and we get more engagements, more signups for new users. And it turns out we went through this experiment. Our hypothesis was completely wrong. What it actually did by our experiments of like reducing the amount of icons that showed up, instead of getting more engagement from new users, what we actually got was not a statistic increase in that particular data point, but we did get a statistical increase in, so for example, if we highlighted the sticky tool, like the sticky notes, and made it really prominent, we would make users use that particular tool more. So we're rethinking, like, how do we approach the simplification? Because we can't just like hide icons and take away stuff, because then users will only use what's there. I think the approach that we're gonna start thinking about is like different experience for different level of user. So a power user might want to see every single tool that's available, right? A brand new user might want a more guided experience until they're more comfortable. And then you sort of have this like middle level where they want to do some more advanced things, but they don't want to get overwhelmed. And like, how do we design a different level of experience for a different type of user?
Adobe did that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Adobe did that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think Revit needs that.
Revit really needs that. But Adobe did that with, I want to say, not InDesign, Premiere. Okay. You could do like very simple, like, what are you trying to do? Like, I want to edit a video, or I want to do whatever. Same thing with InDesign. Like, I want to make a booklet. I want to make a whatever. So I think it's a great hypothesis, but yeah.
No, definitely. I think that what I would guess happened with Amazon was they did some sort of like heat map, and they were like, anything that somebody clicked on, we're adding it. Like anything anyone clicked on at any time, we're adding it to the main page. And I think that I barely use I think exactly like what Preston said. I think their most compelling thing is their really, really smart search engine. Yep. And I think that that's kind of where a lot of things in terms of simplifying are going to be headed, is actually leveraging AI in that area. Adobe actually is working on doing stuff for essentially users that are partially blind or something like that, doing like a speech to text AI generated content. And they're doing all kinds of stuff for like generative like imagery and stuff like that, or editing capabilities, or leveraging things that you're already doing but trying to reduce your cognitive load while doing them. I think that Amazon is really just trying to be like when you go to the grocery store hungry, like they're hoping that once you go on it, if you see like 20% off of this thing, you're gonna be like, well, I have to add it to my cart, which is not the case. Most people, I would wager, just based on talking to you guys and myself for sure, I go in, I type in exactly what I'm looking for, I go in with a purpose. I'm not like going there to peruse, and it's not like I'm going to like, you know, shop for online clothing or furniture or something. Like I'm not, I go for a specific purpose. Good.
Okay. Too many mics. Yeah. No, but to your point, the same thing that like the design and like CVS, that still works in Amazon, right? Like if you're going to the checkout and they're like, but don't you also want? I'm like, damn, I actually do also want. And like you end up like, right. But like everything else before that, it's just like it should just be a search bar and a button that says search it. And then you're done. And then you get there, you're like, oh, here's 14 million other things you could buy, but you're probably only buy like one. And then you just keep doing that, right? Like that's how you like leverage somebody else's stuff.
And I think it's probably pretty smart with the, like based on what you previously bought, you might also like this.
Right.
Like it does sometimes get me with that. I'm not gonna lie, but like for the most part, it's usually just like buy it again. Like I bought something, I wanna buy it again.
So Kanoa is an e-commerce company, which is why we talk about this so much. This was used to be 6 months of talking like this, by the way.
What's up?
I do have a hypothesis though that if like Amazon did, like if we did simplify the UI, like people would freak out. You know, like because it goes back to
Like
the
it's
consistency.
a 404. Yeah, it's not.
It goes back to the consistency thing of like what people expect. You know, if they've used a product for so long, and then all of a sudden you like you flip the left bar and the right bar, and they're like, it happens.
Yeah.
I wanted to gauge the room just to get a sense as to like where everyone's heads are at. It sounds like you guys are mostly in the last year. Is that fair? Second last year. Okay. All right. I'm curious. What how, just show of hands, how many of you guys are actively looking to get into tech or technology? Okay. How many of you guys are maybe looking to get into like more AEC, like architectural engineering construction? Okay. Okay, so about half. Okay. Super helpful. So for the folks, it seems like we got actually a good mixture of both. Talk to us. So some of you guys started as architects, engineers. What was that thought process like? Just brass tacks, like I know for me, both, I literally could not afford to be a junior architect in New York City, so that made the decision fairly simple. But really curious to hear like just everything that went on in your brains to go from AEC to technology. And also, I mean, the AEC space has gotten a bad rep. Like I'm looking for folks like are actively looking to innovate just a traditional AEC as well. So we don't all have to go to the kind of tech side. I mean, but help what went through your minds in these decisions?
It's a dangerous question to ask because I have a lot of things to say about the architecture industry, but I won't bash it because I know we're in a room of potentially aspiring architects. But for me, it was similar, Jose. I also couldn't afford to be a junior architect in New York City. I'll be very transparent. When I graduated in 2013, my starting salary was $45,000 a year in New York City, and the only thing I could afford was to share an apartment with 3 other people. And like so, it was a 3-bedroom that wasn't really a 3-bedroom; it was a 2-bedroom, and we all paid $1,000 each. So like that was the reality for me, and I remember one day I was talking to the principal architect who hired me, and I was trying to imagine myself in his shoes, like in 10 years or 15 years. I was like, could I do what he does? And I thought about what he did, and I was like, no, I can't. Like I don't want to be like he worked long hours, right? And I'm sure he's getting paid well, but like long hours, he was constantly stressed, like from the client or from the owner of the firm or from whatever. And I didn't want that. But I was good at technology. I always was, and I sort of carved a little niche for myself in BIM. But then, and I thought maybe that would be my career. But then I became a BIM consultant after being a BIM manager for a few years. And I went around to other firms. I went around to big firms that you would have heard of, like SOM, HOK, Gensler, and saw how they were doing BIM, and it was very disheartening. Like everyone was doing the B and the M part very well, you know, the building and the modeling part well. No one was taking advantage of the I. Like they might have just well called it boom, and it would have been the same, building modeling. So it was kind of disheartening for me. But I did get very good at programming, and thought maybe I could, you know, make a career out of that. And so that's what I focused on. But it was a long winding path. I also considered UX design at some point, and realized it was just I wasn't born to be a designer. I realized that about myself. I like the autonomy of being a coder, and the fact that like I can create something from nothing. It's kind of nice. It's like being an architect, really.
And it's fast.
And it's fast. Yeah, the feedback loop is much quicker. So that's how I found myself here.
My experience is very similar to Jeff's. I was an architectural designer for a couple of years, for I think total 4 or 5 years, and I love design. Like I love design so much. It was like live for it. I mean, but it was the same story, man. It was just I couldn't afford it. Like you can't. It was worse than being a starving artist, because like at least starving artists, like there's something there. Like there was nothing. It was just a lot of work and no money. And that's not to scare anybody away, because I don't think that that's necessarily the case now. But what I think is the same as before is that I think what I learned in school anyway, and I can't say this for everybody, is like you learn to work really hard. You don't necessarily learn to work really smart. Like what programs are really good at are being lazy. Lazy is an asset. It seems like it's not a virtue, but it's such a big virtue, because what you're going to try and do is figure out the way to not do more work. So you're going to solve this problem in such a way that you never have to touch it again. Now, if you can combine the two, be both lazy and hardworking, which is sort of an oxymoron, or a paradox of some sort, then you end up doing the best of all things, right? You find a way to build a system to do this work for you that you never have to do again. So I transitioned to BIM because I was like, okay, well, I really like design. I still want to be in this, but I'm actually pretty good at training people. I can teach people things. I like talking to people, and I'm great at the tech side of this. And when I got there, I was like, "There's no one wants any more new stuff. People don't want any innovation. Like they didn't want like that was the disheartening thing. And what I realized is like it wasn't that a lot of folks didn't want it. What they wanted was what we were talking about before. They wanted a button to click that was going to do the thing that they wanted it to do for them. So if you could figure out how to like just design something that was so simple, like y'all might be too young for this, but don't judge me if you are. Shazam, like I think this is like a joke on the internet for a while, but like Shazam is the best app in the whole fucking world. You click a button and it tells you what song there is. Like I don't know if you realize like how sick that is. This is so insane. No app has ever been better than Shazam except for I don't know. Maybe Uber, because like I don't know, but they you know what I mean, like, but nothing existed like that before. It's you're humming a thing and you can tell you what it is. Like that's nuts. So like that as a solution, like that's how good every solution needs to aspire to be, and that's what I got really excited about when I was thinking about software. And I was like, you know, you can see me, I get excited about it. I get excited about like building something that somebody would really want that much. And software was a whole other kind of beast too. So I mean, I guess what I'm trying to come to say is like, you have to find the thing that excites you. Like that's one good thing that architecture taught was like, find the thing that excites you and then figure out, again, how to get paid for it. And then figure out how to like pay yourself through all the things that you learn, because somebody's always gonna need the skills that you have. So still working on that challenge, but don't just like stay in architecture just cause. Like learn everything that Sonny and your professors have to teach you, and then use it to make yourself the best whatever thing that makes you like pumped about whatever it is you're trying to do. And that'll take you in architecture or from architecture or like wherever it is you want to go next. So.
There's one more thing to add, which is that like you might be wondering, how do you get from architecture to tech, right? I mean, there are many routes. Almost all of them involve upskilling at some point, right? Learning new skills to break into tech, and you can either try to learn it yourself, pay someone to teach you, or go back to school, right? Some combination thereof. I would say for me, I sort of did a combination of all three of those things. I learned on the job. I learned how to use Dynamo on the job. Dynamo is like Grasshopper, but in Revit, and out of a necessity, right? And then I learned Python as a necessity because I hit the limit of what I could do in Dynamo. And then once I acquired those skills, I wanted to learn more. Suddenly I was the smartest person in the room when it came to doing anything in Dynamo at my firm. And I realized I didn't have all the answers, so I needed to go find the answers. I guess my point is, it's like, you know, don't just jump straight into like a brand new program, right? Get a feel, like try to learn on the job if you can, if your job will let you. Like if you're interested in something, pursue it. I think it's better to do and ask for forgiveness later than ask permission to do something. And then if you find your niche, then absolutely invest in yourself.
I realize this question couldn't have been less geared towards me, but I have something to say. I think we're, as a society, moving towards the generalist mindset, and so I wouldn't be afraid to. I think for a while I thought having multiple interests was like a hindrance to me because I wasn't really specialized in one specific thing. And so whether you enjoy tech, whether you enjoy architecture, like, you know, New York, as you can see from endless construction, they're always going to need architects. They're always going to need strict architects. And so is every other major city in the country. And so it's not that I'm, again, have no understanding of that world, but in general, I think that, not just generalist, you know, I never thought that my job would have become obsolete. When I was an engineer at NBC, I actually jumped ship into UX because they started cutting the engineering side because they realized that they didn't care about emerging tech because they were a media company. So you never know what is going to go obsolete. And so the reason I wanted to jump in was really just because, like, you know, whatever you do, I don't think that there's any harm, and I think that there's only benefit to pursuing your side interests as well, and especially if they in any way relate to what you're currently doing. So that's all I would say on that.
Oh, forgot, there was one more big thing that happened. There was a recession. I don't know if you guys remember. So nobody can get a job, so you had to figure out something else to do. That was the other thing that you might want to think about. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I mean, macroeconomically, I don't know, whatever. But the point is like, hopefully you're not in a position where you're like, I need to figure out how to eat, so I got to figure out another job. But that's also a big motivating factor is you know, food. So there's that.
And one more thing. Social media also, as much as I hate to say, I'm not a social media, like, I have the accounts and stuff, but I'm not good at it. But if you do have any talent in it, like, people like, I've seen accounts that I actually pay attention to that are like, learn about space, or like learn about, you know, and it's like people that aren't making a lot of money in their stuff, like, you know, if you're really good and you honestly want to teach people about, you know, buildings or architecture, engineering, or anything like that, I know that that's kind of like a hard pivot, but like that can get you funding. Like there's a lot of ways that you can get like grants, social media, like there's so many ways that you can get the money that you need to do the cool stuff that you want to do. So.
I love it. Everyone, we have 3 minutes left. I want to open this up at least for maybe kind of rapid fire. Is there any questions that might stand out you guys want to share? Otherwise, I personally have one, and maybe just one thought as you guys go into the market is not everything is a technology problem. In fact, in my particular case, the reason why I felt it necessary to leave traditional architecture and to start really my own thing is because I figured the future of the way that we design buildings has to look more integrated. So I literally, like, the only thing that I remember studying in school, like integrated project delivery, and I was like, well, how do I design a company that's like at least ahead of this? And I that was literally how like integrated projects came about. That was really it. There was no kind of creative function. It's a mouthful, if anything. But my hunch was that I think we actually need to fundamentally rethink like the entire business model of architecture. it's in design and engineering and construction, like it's become a trope where it's like you're overworked, you're underpaid. Typically someone at the top, a principal, is the one kind of really calling the shots and making money. They're running a slave shop. This is the extremes, right? But this is, and of course, and in grad
Super
school
scary.
in grad school we're like trained to like almost obsess over these folks, and I was for one, out of necessity to pay like the rent, I had to actually leave it, but it was my first love. Design is my first love, and so in my case it was almost a response to it to like, how do we just reconsider an entirely new value proposition that doesn't force low wages on folks to like make a business model work. So in our case, certain promises that I made to myself was like, for one, I'm gonna bootstrap this thing. I'm gonna like literally prove that we can provide value, and like someone's willing to pay you $1, and then you'll make $1, and then you'll realize like you can't afford to pay your rent. So you're gonna figure out a way to make $2, and then 10, and then 1,000, and then 200, and then as you grow, you're gonna start to realize like, okay, I need some help here and there, and it's a slow burn, but like it forces like what 99% of other businesses around the world have to figure out, which is like more money needs to come in the door than leave. Like I grew up working with my parents at a pizza shop. They did not have VC funding, which is good. I mean, this is good. Technology got so used to like having a good idea, going and raising money to like prove it on someone else's dime. Like most businesses have to provide value to sustain themselves long periods of time. So what I would encourage you guys to think is, as what it seems like to be a lot of architects and engineers in the room, like our natural inclination is to like solve problems through tech because that's our, that's our inclination. But also remember, like, it's about creating like valuable propositions to folks, right? If it takes somebody, 10 days to do something that maybe you figured out a way to do in a day, that's pretty valuable, right? If it costs them $1,000 and you figured out a way to do it for $100, like that's really valuable as well. So really wrapping around the tech plus the value proposition, I think is something that I know, at least for myself and the team, is like something that we take really seriously, right? So just a reminder, not everything is a tech problem. I'll wrap it up with final thoughts. So question for well, we're already 1 minute over, but if you had to tell yourself one thing to your recent graduate student self, just newly graduated, that you've learned now, that you have the kind of benefit of hindsight, what would you tell that young Sabrina as like what she should be paying attention to? And now we'll wrap it up with that.
What would you tell this young Sabrina? I guess I would say, kind of similar to echoing what I was saying before, be malleable. Like allow for, understand that you don't know everything that you need to know for the job that you're going to do out the gate. Be willing to continue your learning, and be flexible with what you're hoping to get as the outcome.
Yeah, I would tell young Preston, just build something fast. Like literally just do anything and then put it out there. And if you want somebody to pay for it, then have them pay for it. If you wanted feedback, get feedback. Don't overthink. Don't sit there overthinking it. Just like do it. And also your biggest probably strength is, and this is probably for all y'all too, hard work. Like architects are just like preternaturally hard workers. You could probably beat anybody when it comes to hard work. So just be aware of that. If you just pick the right thing to be a hard worker at, you'll probably win.
My advice to young Jeffrey would probably be honest, and really to yourself more than really to the outside world. But although you should be honest to folks you interact with. What I mean by that is it took me a long time to be honest with myself that architecture wasn't the right career for me. Like besides the monetary part of it, I don't know if it was sunk cost fallacy or I don't know, just the allure of being a starchitect one day. I don't know what it was that kept me in for so long. But if I had been honest to myself from the beginning, I think I'd still probably would have ended up as a software engineer, but I wouldn't have wasted so much time in the early days.
Everyone, we're over time. So we take